This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. You're listening to Doc and Jock. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me, my cousin, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. What's up, cuz?
Did you see this article in the Detroit News about Darko Milicic?
Yes, dude. I saw it actually from For the Win. So I was scrolling through Twitter last night, and, you get some menial information. Really, a lot of people were focused on Donald Trump's taxes. Bro, I don't know how anybody could cut a check for $40 million. I couldn't do it. Dude, you cut a check for $40 million, my arm would be shaking. I'd just be like, $40 million. But when you make $150, it puts it all into perspective.
It's all in perspective there.
It's all in perspective. But then I saw Darko Milicic got blasted before practice. Good job by the Pistons keeping that under wraps. But I had a feeling, though, I can divulge this. There are people in my family that work in the music industry, do DJ type work. Mm-hmm. So when some of the athletes go around town, they bump into some family members of mine. So I realize and I hear some stories on the down low regarding the party antics of some of the guys in town. And hey, listen, for me, I'm not really into all that. I don't care where people go in the evening hours. I do care, though, if an athlete shows up like drunk or maybe is partying a little bit before games. I go, oh, potentially that's not really a winner. I'm looking for a guy that's going to be diehard, and when the day's over, you go home, hit the film room, stuff like that. So I had heard whispers that Darko was a partier and that he wasn't committed, but I kind of felt like with the talent that he had, that he might have been able to overcome it. Unfortunately, in the game of basketball and the game of life, if you're not committed, if you're not 100% diehard into anything, it's just going to crumble. But to see that he'd show up drunk before practice, that's a lot of brass, man. Damn.
Real similar situation. I had friends who were friends with him and hung out with him when he had his time in Detroit. And same thing. Like, he would just get loaded, and they just talked about how he was always drunk. And if you look at it now, I mean, the dude's basically a farmer out in Serbia. So you see where his career went. What a complete and utter disaster. Things, though, that aren't a disaster. This podcast, we're going to be doing all kinds of great things. As you can tell, my voice is pretty much shot right now. And
what happened?
That's due to Monday night when we attended Raw. We're going to break down some Raw later on in the show. Our middle segment, we're going to have Justin Rose, our buddy, your buddy, good friend of the podcast. We're going to have him on to sit there and basically help walk you through what you should do for your bracket. And then to kick this bad babblary off, we're going to talk some Detroit Lions. Lots of big moves. Bob Quinn settling in nicely, doing a lot of big things right now. I mean, he was busy this weekend. That's for damn sure. So I want to pick your brain. I want to know where you're at with all these free agent moves that he's doing right now.
It was great to hear what Bob Quinn was doing. When you look at it, all we ever asked for was kind of a plan that we all could look and say, hey, we think we know what's going on. And so in terms of rebuilding a football team, you and I have said it when we first started this project. How do you build a football team? Yeah, you can go flash in the pan. You can go spend big money on big-time wide receivers. You could spend big money on big-time running backs. You could give a boatload of your salary cap space to a quarterback. But everybody knows that you win football games, you win championships in the trenches. So he's identified the needs. He saw, in 2016 what this Detroit Lions team was capable of doing. And he said, okay, first things first, let's blow out some of these crumb bum offensive linemen that we got. And when you go from the old line, when you just pull it up, go look at what the line looked like in 2016 with Riley Reif, Warford, Laken Tomlinson looks like a bust, and you go, no. He looked at it, he surveyed the landscape and said, no, we're not going to go into 2017 with that. Matthew Stafford, had input and said, listen, you got to protect my ass if you want some success. And so we go out there, you get Ricky Wagner, you go out there and you get TJ Lang, you go out there and you say, okay, you're going to rebuild this offensive line, and with the emergence of Taylor Decker, you say, this could be an offensive line that could do some things, and then you combine that with the success of Glasgow from the draft. You might add more pieces in this upcoming draft. The offensive line looks good. When I look at the defense, though, I go, it looks like more depth when in the signings. I don't see impact. I don't see stats. I don't see sexiness on the defensive side, which leads me then to believe that he's going to focus on that side of the ball, the line, the safeties, the linebackers, on that in the draft. But hey, when I heard the news, the biggest thing that happened in the offseason that made me say, okay, that this guy is really on board is that he wants winners. When the news broke that DeAndre Levy was cut and what the Lions are still going to have to eat based upon his contract, I said, good. DeAndre Levy's not a winner. He's not a winning football player right now in terms of where he's at with his headspace, where he's at talent-wise, and they observed it. We knew it. You knew it. I saw it. Everybody saw it, that DeAndre Levy, in terms of what he could provide the Detroit Lions, it wasn't a match. Cut him out. Boom, blow him out. And so now you realize, okay, Bob Quinn has standards. And he realizes that if you're not going to perform for this team, if you're not going to be a championship-level player, there's a strong opportunity that when your time comes, you're not going to be re-signed, and we're always going to look for better. And all I can say is the guys that were brought in are a little bit of an upgrade in terms of the free agents, but I'm a little bit more concerned. My excitement was great when it first happened. I'm like, okay, good. TJ Lang, the number one target, awesome. But now I go, the defense needs work. It still needs work. There's not enough impact guys that they got on the defensive side of the ball.
And I think you kind of nailed it all in a nutshell right there. They did a great job addressing the trenches on both sides of the ball. You're right. On defense, it looks like it's more rotational players, more depth guys, but you're adding guys to that line, and that was a real weakness to this team last year. Their defensive line struggled. They had issues getting to the quarterback, had issues putting pressure on the quarterback. They also had issues sitting there bringing down running backs. I mean, they got ran all over last season. So you go out, you add a couple pieces there. You sit there on the offensive side now, you look at it, he's totally revamped that right side. Well, this is assuming that TJ Lang's going to play right guard. He's totally revamped that right side by blowing out Brandon Pettigrew in the middle of the season last year, sitting there letting Riley Reif go, and then sitting there letting Warford leave as well. And you sit there and you bring in a guy like a TJ Lang, you bring in
Ricky Wagner,
thank you. Like, my brain is just shot right now. And on top of that, you bring in Darren Fells, and he's a better blocking tight end. He's not a guy who's going to go out there and catch you 6 or 7 touchdowns in a season, but he's a better blocking tight end. So you sit there, you just strengthen that right side of the ball. I mean, that's going to allow you to run better. It's going to allow you to protect your quarterback better. And let's be honest about it. Your quarterback is about to be very, very expensive. You're about to make him one of the highest paid players in all of the NFL. And it's that time. It's the way these things work. I mean, I'm not going to stand up on this table and I'm not going to pull my hair out and scream and throw a tantrum that Matt Stafford's about to get paid all this money, because we know it's going to happen. This is just the nature of the beast. There's always one guy, and it's usually a quarterback, who ends up making a boatload of money. And he's going to sit there and hold that spot for probably all of 15 to 30 seconds until the next guy comes up. And it's just the way it works out. But by going out, grabbing a guy like a TJ Lang and grabbing Ricky Wagner, I like those moves. I like that. This is a guy who gets it. He understands how to win football games. You've got to win in the trenches on both sides of the ball. And I would like him to go out there, and I would like him to add a few pieces here and there to the defensive side. But like you said, I think the draft's rolling around. I think it's going to be a very heavy draft for the defense. I can see them drafting nothing but linebackers, DNs, and secondary help, and mixing in a running back, and that's going to probably be it. You know, I don't anticipate them going out drafting a huge wide receiver. I don't expect them to go out and draft. I mean, if they can get Joe Mixon 3rd round, I've seen him have a tag for a 2nd round. I can see them spending that pick there. But really and truly, I think your first pick for the Lions coming off the board going into the NFL 2017 draft is going to be somebody to help that front 7, whether it be a linebacker or whether it be a D end. And that's great. That's outstanding. That's what we need, right? That's what the Lions need to do at this point. They need to sit there and they need to address both sides of the ball.
With TJ Lang, though, any concerns about the injury? When you say hip and you say that he had a nagging foot problem throughout the entire course of the 2016 season, okay, I know everybody loves the hometown guy. You love the fact that he's a media guy. He comes in, he tells us things. He's willing to talk about the football team in glowing terms. I mean, he is a PR guy's dream in that he talks glowingly about the Lions. He's like, yeah, the Lions are a team that's on the rise. I wouldn't have came to Detroit if I didn't think they were championship caliber. I'm like, okay, yeah, very good. Toe the line. Interesting stuff that he kind of have said in his first couple of days back in Detroit. But then I go into the nuts and bolts of it. 29 years old, lineman, understandable that he wants to come home and settle his family in the town that he was born. Completely understandable. But for me, all I care about is how can TJ Lang produce for the Detroit Lions. And part of it is as well teaching Matthew Stafford a little bit about what happened in Green Bay, educating him up a little bit about how Aaron Rodgers views the game and things like that. So he has value off the field as well, in terms of speaking on a rival that you're going to have to try to beat in order to win the NFC North. And then you look at it and you say, how is he going to be compared to Laken Tomlinson? It's an automatic upgrade, win-win. But the biggest thing as a rational person you have to also keep in mind is this is all good on paper. They got to gel. The line has to work together, and they all got to stay healthy. And do you have any concerns at all about TJ Lang and his ability to stay on the field in 2017? Is he going to produce?
That's not even a thought to me.
Not a thought at all?
I'm not worried about his health. He comes in, he's supposedly healthy and he's fit. I'm expecting him to sit there and be able to start the season this year. I'm not sure how much you really put into statistics and different schematics and different things like that, but Pro Football Focus does a great job. And they went ahead and they basically listed their top 25 offensive linemen. And TJ Lang ranks number 22. He gets a grade of 83.3. And I'm going to read you kind of what it says about him here. Josh Sitton's old teammate, TJ Lang, has continued where he left off a year ago with another fine season. Lang has matched Sitton's, allowing just 5 total quarterback pressures in 9 games, and has yet to allow either a sack or a hit on Aaron Rodgers. I mean, you're going to bring something like that to the Detroit Lions. You're going to put that along your offensive line. I think that bodes well. I think that helps out a lot. His run blocking hasn't been as good as it was a year ago, so maybe he's on the decline there, but I'm still thinking it's an upgrade over what you had. Which is a trend with most of the Packers line. So is it an issue of him or is it an issue of what's around him? So I just see that him coming in and playing along that right side, and he's going to be playing with Ricky Wagner, who supposedly, depending on what you go by and what you listen to, the best left tackle or the best right tackle available, right? I just see this working well. I see him having maybe if you think he's on the downside of his career because he's been injured and he's missed a couple games here or there, I think maybe he has a career renaissance here. Again, it's a hometown boy, wants to come back. He loves the Lions, right? Even though he was in Green Bay, he's always loved the Detroit Lions. So he comes home, and I think he wants to put a show on. I think he wants to help, and he wants to win. And I think that is apparent by the way he talks, by the way he plays, and what he's going to do and what he's going to contribute to this team.
No, that's good. I like that, but to not have any panic at all.
I don't. I just don't.
It could be a recurring problem. Just stay tuned and watch regarding when he does actually get on the field, because they do have to gel, and he's not going to be participating in any of the OTAs. It looks like, by all accounts, that he's going to join the team right around the time training camp starts, which should be enough time to gel and work on things, and it should be enough time for the offensive line to gel with the 4 preseason games with the amount of time that they are going to work together. But there is still no guarantee that this line is going to be productive. When you look at it on paper, they do have talent. These are guys that were coveted. And so now it's going to be, upon those guys to work together and really help this running game. It's going to be very important.
Let me ask you this. So last year, we bring Taylor Decker in, right? Plays really nice at left tackle. As the season went along, agree or disagree that he got better as the season went along?
Very well. He's still got to work on his, pass rush, or he's got to work on the ability to guard Matthew Stafford when the opponents are pass rushing. I think run blocking is his strength, right?
Right, exactly. So we both agree that as the season went on, he got better. Graham Glasgow, 3rd round pick. I'm assuming that he's going to be playing left guard. I'm not sure where you have him originally slotted in to start the season, but I'm assuming he's going to play left guard. And I thought as the season wore on, he played pretty good. I know Pro Football Focus graded him very poorly, but this is a guy who, his first year in the league, started off as a guard and then got moved to center. So basically he was learning 2 positions at one time. I thought he played, as the season went on, I thought you've seen an elevation in his game. I'm expecting him to get better, take a step forward. Travis Swanson, you've seen what he meant to this offensive line. When he went out and was down with his concussion, the offensive line struggled, right? It wasn't as good as it was when he was in there. So I think that bodes well for this whole unit taking that step forward. Now you bring in a guy like Ricky Wagner, you bring in a TJ Lang, right? 2 veterans, 2 guys who, for the most part, know what's up and know how to win. They come from winning organizations. Again, Bob Quinn wants winners, right? These 2 guys come from winning organizations. They've been there. They've played in big games. I think you mix them in with this young line, and I think it's that much better. I think everybody takes that step forward, and I think it's due a lot to the veteran leadership of these new guys that you're bringing in and the young talent that you have that's ready to take that next step forward.
So a question that I've asked a lot of people is, how much excitement should fans realistically have? I mean, they've had great signings before. Some people I've talked to were excited about the signing of Reggie Bush when he was here. People get excited around this time, and many people will say, hey, this is the only time that I'm allowed to be excited. So as a fan, as somebody that watches the Lions, I was excited because I think the players are going to be well. They're going to fit. They're going to do some things. But at the same time, the appropriate level of skepticism would be they have to stay healthy. They have to stay on the field, because not only is that schedule tough, but you got to remember, too, you still don't have the final piece to that puzzle. You could have a great offensive line. Awesome. But if you don't have a running back that can hit the hole, that knows which hole to read and doesn't go in the right spot, Theo Riddick is great in the pass game. We all know it. Third down guy, you give him the ball, use him in the screen game to get yards, great. Amir Abdullah has to be on the field. He's not available. So at any time at all, we have to be nervous that he's going to go down and get hurt. So the final piece of that puzzle is, which running back are you going to get to, run the football and be the guy that's going to get the yards and do the work? So I'm looking forward to seeing who is going to do that. And then at the same time, you have to really focus and be concerned about some of the defensive guys they got. And I guess the other question that I have is, when the time comes, what are they going to do with Eric Ebron? Because if he's still on this team, I don't know if that's a winning player. I don't know if you have that guy, still on your team, because he just represents everything that's wrong with the Lions. Drops, personality issues, kind of maybe gives up on certain plays, is not there at 1,000%. I know he's in the gym getting at it and trying to prepare for this upcoming season, but I just think you could find better at the tight end spot. And you've broomed out DeAndre Levy. I'm very curious to see if Eric Ebron's going to be on this team. By all accounts, it looks like there is a strong chance he's going to come back. But I look at it and I say, with the Detroit Lions, you always have to be skeptical, because we can talk about what should happen, but what do we always say on this podcast? What really happens is the truth, and the fact of the matter is, this Lions team, sometimes you could put all the puzzle pieces right, and sometimes it just comes out wrong. It's very unusual in terms of what this organization has done in the past. Right now on paper, I'm happy, I'm very content, but I'm very, very skeptical that it's still going to work out. When I see it and I go, wow, this offensive line is getting pushed. I see a running back getting 4 and 5 yards a clip. I see the running game numbers improve. Then I'll be like, all right, show me, baby. Show me what you got.
I think as a Lions fan, you can be excited headed into this year, but I think what you really need to be excited about is what you have for a general manager. I think this is the first time in a long time that Detroit Lions fans can look at the guy running the organization, making all of the decisions for the player personnel, and going out and selecting players and signing them to contracts, whether they be big or small. And it seems like he has a real grasp on what he's doing. I think every move that he's made thus far in the last 2 free agent periods, he has 1 draft underneath his belt at this point. I think it's all been solid. I mean, last year he went out and his big signing was Marvin Jones. Right? That was the big guy that he brought in, and I think he felt he had to do that because Calvin left. I don't think that was naturally a move that he would normally make. I think it was something that he almost felt compelled to because, hey, we just lost a big-name wide receiver, a guy who can sit there and stretch the field for us. We have to go out and we have to get the number 1 wide receiver out there. And I think maybe looking back on it, he might be kicking himself a little bit in the butt for making that signing, because Marvin Jones looked really good for 2 or 3 games to start the season last year, and then after that, it was real sporadic when he looked like he was either at his full complement or was able to perform at the level that you expected for the payday that he got. But if you look at everybody else besides him, it was all low-key stuff. It was guys that you're like, why are we bringing this guy in? Yeah, okay, he's depth. He's rotational talent. He's going to maybe help fill out the roster a little bit. In the end, you get a guy like a Kerry Hyder who... Did you know who Kerry Hyder was going into last season? I mean, you might have heard of him, but you had no idea who the hell he was. And he was the guy who basically helped lead your team in tackles and sacks, tackles for loss and sacks. I mean, he was imperative to that defensive line. That was a great move by your general manager. Now looking at this, he's gone and he's like, hey, you know what? We need to address the right side of the line. Let's go out there and let's go hit big with a free agent here and there. Brings in 2 guys who I think both of us are high on them. Both of us like the moves, right? And we both agree that it's probably going to help that offensive line and it's going to make it better. So he goes out and addresses the offensive line. And with 3 moves, actually 5 moves, by letting Brendan Pettigrew go, by going out and not re-signing your original right guard and your original right tackle, going out and replacing both of those guys by signing TJ Lang and
Ricky Wagner.
Ricky Wagner, thank you. I don't know why I keep forgetting his name. It's horrible. Signing
That's
Ricky,
good. If he's an offensive lineman, just get in the trenches, do the job. They're supposed to be unsung heroes.
Exactly. Ricky Wagner and Darren Fells, you've now strengthened that right side of the line, and you've done it at a savings to this team because the cap hit's not as high as what you were paying the other guys. So in basically a few moves, he's helped straighten out the books, and he's made a better product on the field. And yeah, he goes out and he adds some more rotational guys, some more talent to help balance out this roster and add some depth. And that's kind of how he allocates his free agent money. He the whole thing is he knows how to build this team. And I think we both agree you got to build a team through the draft, right? That's where your big impact players are going to come from. If you can sit there and you can add 1 or 2 free agents every single offseason that make your team better, that's great. Otherwise, you need to just kind of fill out the roster, bring guys in who are going to make impacts in either packages or in smaller moves where if a guy goes down, you can just sit there, next man up, rotate him in. And I think that's great. That's something that we haven't had here as Lions fans. I can't remember the last time I can tell you that I'm supremely confident in the general manager of the Detroit Lions.
No, it's
and I feel like with Bob Quinn, that's kind of where we're at right now.
We have a strong direction. You got
exactly. If I was to sit there and I was to tell you 3 years ago when we started this project that in, 3 years' time, we're going to have a general manager for the Detroit Lions that I feel much more confident about him at the helm than I do Ken Holland for the Red Wings, what would you have said to me?
I would have thought you were crazy.
Exactly.
I didn't think the Wings would fall apart like this.
Exactly. And that's where we're at right now. That's exactly where we're at. Bob Quinn has a really good grasp on what's going on around the league, and he's doing a great job filling out his roster.
On the offensive side, when you look at some of the signings on defense, linebacker Paul Warlow kind of lost his job in Atlanta, defensive end Cornelius Washington, cornerback DJ Hayden, defensive tackle Akeem Spence. Like you said, role players, guys that you want to fill in for depth and competition's sake. But in terms of impact on defense, many people are still looking at it and going, where are the impactful, talented defenders? Because many people think that if you provide that for Terrell Austin, then you can get back to the number 2 ranked defense. But right now, as you look at it, there's definitely a deficit at the linebacker position. And outside of Darius Slay and, Quinn, you have an opportunity to go out there and maybe basically improve the whole secondary and the linebacking core, because that makes the team so much better. That makes the defensive line so much better. Then you provide some relief for Ezekiel Ansah. So you got to fill that side of the ball out. And it doesn't seem like right now in terms of the defense, it seems like they're farther away than the offense. The offense was pretty good last year. What did we see? We saw several scenarios in which the Lions had to come back because the defense would give up long drives. They just weren't able to get a lot of turnovers. They didn't force a whole lot of interceptions and fumbles. And it was one of those things where the defense did not really hold their weight on the team last year. And it cannot happen again this year because the schedule is brutal. It's not an easy schedule. And I think that potentially speaking that I know he probably placated and tried to really make Matthew Stafford happy, but the defense looks like on paper really still needs a lot of work. And even if you go address it in the draft, you still need talented players to go out there and perform. And in your first year, I'm not so certain that that's gonna happen. And so I don't want to get into a whole bunch of games where the Lions are playing 35, 33 games and having to have all these comebacks, because I know the head coach, Jim Caldwell, will say, well, every game's close. But if you're a well-rounded football team, it doesn't have to be. You can win games by 7 to 10 to 15 points. You can have an edge. You can have a defense that can pressure the quarterback and make it a scenario where they don't want to play either side of the ball, where a team can be dominant. And I think they're building that to that point, but kind of look at what New England did in terms of their defense. They went with unheralded guys too as well, but they emerged. Who's going to emerge on this defensive side of the ball? You don't think it's going to be Warlow, Spence, Washington. I don't think so, but maybe as a collective unit, they might want to try and
but again,
do better.
If at this time last year I said Kerry Hyder, you'd have been like, who?
That's true.
And
that's one.
You know his name now, right? So maybe there's some method to the madness here. If they are to go out and they are to make one more move before the draft, and they're going to address something, is it safe to say that you want them to address the defensive side of the ball?
Find somebody on defense that's impactful and talented. And I just don't think in free agency right now there's that one big name outside of Dante Hightower, but the price seems like it doesn't fit now with what the Lions have spent. It doesn't seem like there's going to be enough space because he's going to get a huge contract.
Yeah, originally I thought he was going to get somewhere right around 10.5. Now it's looking more
moving
like
up
12 to maybe $14 million a year. So, but yeah, no, I'm right there with you. If they're going to go out and they're going to make a move, before the draft. I would like to see an impactful signing, something along the lines of your TJ Lang, your Ricky Wagner, for the defensive side of the ball. And I'd like to see it in the front seven. I'm not necessarily worried about that secondary. And I think this draft, this NFL draft, is so stacked on the defensive side, it's ridiculous. Whether it be secondary help, whether it be your corners or your safeties, I think there's a ton of those guys in this draft. I think there's a lot of edge rushers, and I think there's a lot of solid linebackers as well. So I think you're going to sit there and you're going to see this roster really filled out with quite a few rookies from this draft on the defense when we go to sit there and start the 2017 season.
So potentially speaking, do you feel like the Lions might need a defender that could pepper the quarterback, that could pepper the opposing, offensive line, that could pepper the opposing running back and do some things? I'm hearing whispers of potentially Jabrill Peppers out there. I'm hearing Jabrill Peppers maybe scooching his way up there into the number 21 spot, and the Detroit Lions may select him to be that guy to help out on defense. When I see that,
that's a beautiful segue, by the way. You did a very nice job.
I would say that that's totally awful. I think Todd McShay did a phone conference, and he was talking about Jabrill Peppers and all the rumors that maybe he's going to be the one slotted at 21. And still to this day, as we're recording this, he doesn't have a defined position. He's still raw, in essence. And I think at the 21 spot this year, the Detroit Lions need a ready-made guy to come in and handle his business. And so you can do a lot better than Jabrill Peppers. And that's not to discount what Peppers can do. He can be a guy with a couple of years seasoning around a system that he learns and develops. He's a guy in 2 or 3 years you call upon for stuff. But right now where the Lions are at, they need an impact defender like now. So if the Lions take Jabrill Peppers at 21, I'd be shocked and I'd be floored. I'd rather just have Taco Charlton.
And again, kind of...
If it's of those two guys, you'd rather have Charlton, right?
Oh, of course. That's my guy going into this. And I think what you're kind of alluding to here is friend of the podcast, award-winning writer for the Detroit Free Press, Dave Burkett, did a new mock draft. It's his 2.0 mock draft. And in it, he has the Detroit Lions taking safety Jabrill Peppers out of Michigan. But what he goes on to say is if Taco Charlton, Barnett, or Harris don't make it to 21, then it'd be a no-brainer for the Lions. And it says, but in this situation, they have to choose between possibly overdrafting a linebacker or taking the versatile Peppers, who helps both in the secondary and the return game. So this is the thing about Peppers, right? I don't necessarily want him. I don't really see him being a fit for the Lions at 21.
Why?
Because they've got so many other pressing needs. You need to address your linebacking depth. You actually need some linebackers on this team, believe it or not. And you need to sit there and you need to really help out that your front four. I mean, unless you're switching schemes, that's something that you and I don't know about. Unless they're switching schemes that are going to a 3-4 all of a sudden, you run a 4-3 here. You need some edge pressure. You need guys to be able to sit there and make the quarterback's life a living nightmare. So going out and getting a guy like a Jabrill Peppers, who, yes, he would help your safeties. He would sit there, he'd probably play a nickel back for you. So he would kind of play like that hybrid linebacker type position. Yeah, he would help you. Where'd you struggle at most last season? It was covering tight ends. I think he does a great job covering tight ends. I think the guy can hit in the run game. So yeah, there is some good value there by going out and picking Jabrill Peppers. On top of that, he would be a difference maker, I think, in your return game because he is fast, he is elusive, and he's powerful. I just don't like that pick. I don't think it works out well for you. Not when there are other guys out there that look like they would make a more of an immediate impact. I think Peppers is a guy who you bring in, you run some sub packages for him, and maybe in year 2, you're starting to kind of to get the most value and most bang for your buck. At that first year, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle because I think he's going to have some learning. There's going to be a little bit of a learning curve there. I do have a mock draft for you, though, and I have a mock draft from theringer.com from Danny Kelly if you're interested in it.
I'm very interested, but before you get into it, and stay with us too, in the second half of the podcast, we're going to have Justin Rose, and we're going to definitely talk about experience on Monday Night Raw on this very edition of the Detroit Sports Podcast. But real quickly, tell me about theringer.com. I haven't gone to it a whole heck of a lot. Is it a site that you like to go to? This is the one from Bill Simmons?
Yes. So Bill Simmons ends up leaving ESPN, and he was doing his own, he was doing Grantland over there with ESPN.
Very good website. A lot of in-depth, coverage and reports, long-form articles. It was really good. He built it up, and a guy, Bill Simmons, that has some talent, obviously, in terms of his writing abilities.
So he ends up leaving ESPN, leaves Grantland, and decides to start his own new thing. So he starts The Ringer. TheRinger.com, it's interesting. So back in the day, Bill Simmons, when he used to write for ESPN.com, he kind of had his own weekly column where he would touch on a lot of different stuff, wrestling, sports. It was a lot of fun. It was interesting. It was always a good read. There were always long form articles, like 3,000 words or more. So it was always super interesting. And he is a total NBA guy. So they do a good job covering the NBA as well as the NFL and more entertainment, TV, sports, news, different things that are going on around the world. It's not just sports. And he does it in a fun, creative way. And that's kind of what The Ringer is. He has his own group of writers that write on this as well.
Okay, 2 websites. Let's compare it. The Ringer or TMZsports.com? Which one you hitting first?
The Ringer.
The Ringer?
Yes.
Okay.
I know you're a TMZ guy, though.
You see, that's what I'm saying. That's what pulls my attention away. Okay, The Ringer, USA Today.
USA Today.
Okay, very good. One more. The Ringer or, let's say, Bleacher Report?
Probably Bleacher Report. Here's the thing. I get most of my news through my phone, right? Mm-hmm. I have like 9 different sports apps that just kind of bling, bling, bling all throughout the day. So Bleacher Report generally is blowing my phone up at least 36 times a day, and I'm clicking on the articles and I'm going there and reading. So it would probably be The Ringer's there, but it's a little bit down the list.
Okay, so maybe it'll make its way. I'll have to check it out. The part that maybe turned me off a little bit is that kind of combo deal of like sports and entertainment and techie kind of stuff. I kind of just like a niche kind of thing, and so I don't get my news and life kind of stuff in the same spot. You know what I mean? I kind of go sports, ESPN, Bleacher Report, and Sports Illustrated, and then you go life stuff with like TMZ, US Weekly, People, kind of stuff like that. I don't like the whole blending kind of thing.
I think the thought behind it is it's supposed to be like a one-stop spot for guys. Like you want to see what's going on with TVs. You want to see what's going on with the newest video games that are out there. You want to see what's going on with, I don't know, sports entertainment as far as wrestling. You want to see what's going on with the NFL or the NBA. Check out our site. I think it's kind of what it's supposed to be. Getting to this mock draft from Danny Kelly, real quick, I'll give you some highlights. Myles Garrett, DN, goes number 1 to Cleveland. Malik Hooker, safety, goes to the 49ers at 2. Marshawn Lattimore, cornerback, goes to the Bears at number 4. Local product, wide receiver Corey Davis, goes at number 5. He's from Western Michigan. The Titans end up selecting him. First running back off the board is Leonard Fournette. He goes to Carolina at 8. Number 13, the first quarterback goes off the board. That's Deshaun Kaiser from Notre Dame. He goes to the Cardinals. Favorite of yours and mine, linebacker Reuben Foster, goes at 15 to the Colts. A guy who I've seen attached to the Lions is edge rusher Derek Barnett from Tennessee. He goes to the Ravens at 16. Running back Delvin Cook goes 23 to the Giants. So when the Lions go to select, Delvin Cook's still out there if you want your running back for this new revamped offensive line. But with the Lions, what Danny Kelly has the Lions doing here, I'm a huge fan of. I give it like 9 thumbs up if I had 9 thumbs. I think you're a fan of this move as well. They go out and they select DN from Michigan, Taco Charlton. Lions end up picking him up, and they help fill out that defensive line.
I think it's a great thing. And Taco Charlton, not Jabrill Peppers, good mock draft. Listen, these mock drafts have been pretty good lately in terms of all the ones that I've seen. I like the fact that they, it's kind of obvious now who the number 1 pick is going to be. The real action is obviously going to be between 15 and 32. And the part that you really can't predict is who's going to make the trades, who's going to move up. Is there one player, before we get to Justin Rose, if you said, okay, maybe at 15, Reuben Foster, if he's there, is there a player that you would say in the neighborhood of maybe 10 through 21, if he was there, and the Lions would make a move to go up in the draft? Because they've added some draft picks. They have some wiggle room if they want to move up. I know every year we ask the people that we talk to, what percentage you think the Lions are going to move up? And most of them say not likely. They usually draft in that spot. Do you think at all, any inkling that you have that the Lions could be aggressive, move up to 15 to get a Reuben Foster if he's there? Because he's a linebacker and a guy that many people are still high on despite, some of the issues that he's had.
Yeah, he'd probably be the one guy I'd sit there and I wouldn't have an issue if they moved up to go get. I think it'd be a solid move if he's there for you.
Okay, and some of the names that you've said, I'll just say yes or no real fast, and you tell me, would you move up to get him? Would you move up to get wide receiver Corey Davis?
No.
Running back Leonard Fournette?
No.
Deshaun Kaiser?
No.
What about edge defender Derek Barnett?
No. Because I just feel like Derek Barnett is the one guy out of everybody you named who fits the need that this team needs. I just think that you can get somebody with a similar production to him later on in the draft or staying at 21. I think Taco Charlton might be better than Derek Barnett. I know he tore it up for Tennessee and he did a really good job. But I like if I got to pick between sitting there trading away draft picks to move up to get Derek Barnett, I'm just going to stay and take Taco Charlton. Here's a question for you. Jabrill Peppers is a guy who we've just discussed being linked with the Lions. If he's there in the second round, do you take him?
Yeah, second-round talent, third-round talent, that's a guy that could be a project. But unfortunately, I just say that still you could go out there and still get a lot of value in the second round. It could be a running back. It could be somebody that you need on offense as well. So I know that you obviously know the defense is going to be the focus of the draft, but I just think that you could pass on him, let someone else make him a project. I just don't think the Lions need projects right now. They need guys that have talent and can produce in 2017 with that schedule because it's going to be playoff win this year. That has to be the goal, and the onus this year is get that playoff win.
Here's the thing. He's a really weird just where he's slotted. Everybody's mock drafts has him everywhere. Anywhere from being as high as 15, 16, 17 in the first round to basically being somewhere in the third round. He's a polarizing talent. It's so weird. He does a lot of different things really well. He's able to sit there. He has a really high football IQ. I mean, he played basically 2 or 3 positions for the University of Michigan in his football career. So the guy grasps it and he understands it all, but it's just one of those things. He's kind of a tweener. He physically he's a little bit suspect, So it's one of those things.
And I think as we get closer to the draft, I think where he slots in is going to be locked down, probably in the second round, late, maybe to the Giants, but I don't see him going in the first round. I think that a guy like that, when it all shakes out, he'll be a second round to third round talent. But always great to talk Lions, man. We could definitely talk 4 hours about these Lions, especially with the schedule upcoming, where this fits, the draft. So a lot of shows coming out too regarding the draft and how people are shaking it out. So a lot of people's third and fourth version of their mock drafts is out. So a lot of information. And I love just getting in here and digging into it and seeing where it all shakes out. But in terms of our expectations, I think for us, cautiously optimistic is the banner that we will always hang with our Detroit Lions. And hey, why not? Because, hey, it's just their history. There is no way around it. Great talk regarding the Detroit Lions. Let's get Justin Rose on the line. I definitely want to see why he's laughing at me because I have Michigan State in the Elite Eight. Justin Rose next, talking about how to fill out a bracket and his thoughts because he's definitely tuned in to college basketball. Stay with us. You're listening to the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Doc here for the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Thank you for your continued support and allowing us to keep the studio lights on, the microphones hot here at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. If you like what you're listening to, you like the variety of podcasts that you hear, definitely check out our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. That's the easiest way to support us. You get all the news from the network. You can check out the work from Vito, myself, all the guys that are putting out great content almost each and every day. And hey, if you're prone to shop online, click through that Amazon banner, go about your business, shop, and then when you're on that Amazon page, just bookmark it. Anytime at all that you make an online purchase, it kicks us back a little something and helps us keep this project going. We've been going strong since 2013, and that's been largely due to the support of our supporters, and we greatly appreciate it. DetroitSportsPodcast.com.
All right, on the phone with us right now, WXYZ Sport anchor, your friend, my friend, the sexiest man on TV, the sexiest guy on Channel 7. Is that not the best introduction or what, Justin? We've got Justin Rose. Good. What's up, man? How you been?
Good, man. How are you?
Oh, I can't complain. My voice is totally shot, but besides it sounding like I've been sucking on sandpaper, everything is good here, man. We wanted to bring you on because we know that you are you're kind of like our own bracketologist in the area, and I seen you doing some real nice stuff on Channel 7, and of course I follow you on Twitter. You do a really nice job giving tips, tricks, and kind of breaking things down for the average Joe. So we wanted to have you on to kind of talk some bracketology with us, and I guess we'll just kind of start off with what are your tips and tricks for those average Joes filling out those brackets?
There's no science behind it in all reality because it is March Madness and the craziest stuff happens, and then of course, everyone thinks that they picked out the 1 or 2 upsets that are mainstream, and then those don't happen, and usually the ones that no one sees coming are the ones that usually bust your bracket early. So it's a very picky part of the game, but I always think that your gut feeling is the best thing to go with. But if you want to look analytically at it, the big thing for me, and I think teams that go far in the tournament have a couple of common factors involved. Number one, how many upperclassmen/seniors does a team possess? Usually a team with more senior leadership or junior leadership can go further in the tournament just because they understand what it takes to play at that level with that type of pressure, backs against the wall, one-and-done type mentality. You look at like Kentucky teams, some of the Kansas teams, some of the Duke teams of the past that have had those really good young players get upset early, and you kind of scratch your head and you go, how did that happen? Well, you look last year at Michigan State. They had unbelievable senior leadership in Denzel Valentine and Bryn Forbes, Matt Costello, but they went up against a team that also had good upperclassmen leadership in Middle Tennessee State, and there's your upset. So that's one thing I look at, but if you look at some of the other teams that had young experience, like Kentucky, Duke, Kansas of the past, they didn't have that. They relied too much on their youth, and those guys kind of went out there and said, oh, we're better than these guys. And then all of a sudden you saw, oh, wow, they're much better than us, or they can play with us, and that's how upsets happen. Number two, defensive rebounding and defensive stop potential. If a team can play good defense and get those stops, key stops down the stretch, or when teams are going on a little bit of a run and they get a good stop, those are teams that you want to put further on in your bracket than a team that just relies so heavily on offense, because teams can get hot, teams can get cold. So if you're a good shooting team and all of a sudden you go into the tournament, you have an off day, well, you don't have anything to rely on other than hopefully having that turnaround in, say, the second half. So those are two big factors. Defensive rebounding, another thing I look at. You can't let a team continue to get more offensive possessions than you, or you'll be probably looking up at a scoreboard that doesn't favor you. So those are some of the three things that I look at right off the bat before I even look at the team itself. If they have those three factors, I have them usually getting a little bit of an edge as I start to pencil teams in down the bracket.
What's your stance on those people that fill out 2 and 3 and 4 brackets and things like that and try to come across as experts? Are you a guy that says, hey, fill out one bracket and that's it? Or do you say, listen, it's okay that you can fill out multiple brackets. Hey, it just increases your odds of winning.
I'm a little bit of both. I got to brag a little bit. I finished 6th out of 1,000 people a couple of years ago, and I had pretty much one bracket that I went with across the board. So I was in the money in a lot of the different ways that I filled those out in different tournaments. But there's nothing wrong with filling out your main bracket and having that be the one you say, hey, I called that, hey, I picked that in your main bracket. But there's nothing wrong with having it as the secondary one, or, if there's a couple of coin flip games that you really feel, could go either way, there's nothing wrong with filling out one and then filling out the other one and just flipping the coin the other way on the ones that you're really stuck on. But for the most part, I think most people have 35 to 40 teams that they, at least in the first round, that they know are going to go to a Sweet 16. You look at your number ones, you're going to automatically pencil those guys most of the time into the round of 16. So that's 8 victories right there. Those are the types of things you don't really flip your coin on. But no, I have no problem with filling out more than one. I usually have one that I kind of say is mine, that's the one that I'll go publicly, and say, hey, this is what I've got going. But nothing wrong with filling out and increasing the odds, you never know.
All right, to kind of keep it local here, how far do you see our local teams going, Michigan State as well as Michigan in this tournament?
I think Michigan has a better chance of making a run than Michigan State does for some of the factors that I talked about at the beginning. Michigan State, for example, has almost no senior leadership. Alvin Ellis is the only guy, and I don't see him having a Bryn-type-esque performance into the tournament. He didn't show that in the Big Ten tournament, and I don't think that he'll all of a sudden catch fire. It's possible, but I don't forecast that being the thing. He's the only guy. Think about that. Everyone else on Michigan State, barring leaving for the NBA, is coming back next year, and they'll have a little bit more experience under their belt. As far as Michigan's concerned, just look at what Zach Irvin and Derek Walton have done over the past month of the season. 2 seniors who don't want to quit, who don't want to stop playing basketball, who willed themselves to a Big Ten tournament championship, and basically down the stretch, Michigan was an unbeatable team in the Big Ten. So barring the Northwestern Hail Mary, that team's undefeated over the past, 6-7 games? They're playing an unbelievable style of basketball right now. So if you're looking at that, I think Michigan State can win against Miami, but I don't think that they have the horses able to keep up with a Kansas in a round of 32 to move them into the Sweet 16. Not to say it can't happen. I just don't think that it will. We've already seen them play Kansas this year, and they got beat by about 18 points. So that's not a team that I think can go into the Sweet 16 odds-wise. I'd probably put that at maybe 15 to 20% for them to pull that upset off. As far as Michigan goes, they play a Louisville team in round 2. If they get by Oklahoma State, which I do think that they will, and they can run with Louisville a little bit more than other teams would. So if you want to do the homer pick, take Michigan to the Sweet 16. Take Michigan State just one round. But I have Michigan losing to Louisville in my big bracket. I just don't know if they can keep that success going. I'd like to see it happen, but it's just tough. It's just tough this time of year because so many different factors are in play. And after such an emotional, draining week last week for the Wolverines, can they keep that up? And you always see another trend, I guess, to keep with. If you pick upset early, like a 13 or a 12 seed over the 4 or the 5 seed, and they happen to win the next game, the drop-off from the next peak is always something to look at. Like Middle Tennessee State. Now, granted, they lost Syracuse in the second round last year. But if they would have beaten them and gone to the Sweet 16, that's a whole week of media coverage at a place or a team that usually doesn't get that type of, accolades and, hey, look at what you've done, and you have a whole week to kind of settle down, and then you have to go and get ready to play in a Sweet 16 game. So a lot of the times, those teams don't come out with quite the same juice that they had in the past. Like Florida Gulf Coast a couple of years ago. They went to the Sweet 16. The whole week was like, look at Florida Gulf Coast, Dunk City, this and that. And then all of a sudden, they play in their Sweet 16 game and they get run out of the gym. So the layover from Michigan is something that scares me because if they would have played that game, if they would have started on Tuesday after a Sunday game, maybe they could keep that going. But I don't know if the emotions are going to be quite the same as they were with everything that they went through.
Have you ever seen anything as crazy as what Michigan basically has done this past week? I mean, you have an airplane that slides off the runway. You've got a team that sits there, takes a vote on whether or not they should keep going on and head to D.C. to sit there and play their Big Ten tournament games. They end up going and they basically fly in, make it there 3 hours before their game, and then they just get on a run and they just stay hot. And it doesn't look like they have a letdown, and they end up riding that wave of emotions right to the championship, and they end up sitting there pulling away down the stretch of the second half to win the Big Ten championship.
Well, yeah, you have. You've seen it with UConn over the past decade or so. The Kemba Walker, when they won the Big East tournament, when it was still the Big East tournament, they won like 5 games, 5 days, and they came out of nowhere. Then they all went all the way to the Final Four. They beat a Michigan State team in the Elite Eight to get there, and that was kind of one of those things where they had that magnificent run in Madison Square Garden, and then they kept it going through the tournament. That's what Michigan fans are hoping will continue to happen. Derek Walton is playing out of his mind. Can he have that Kemba Walker-esque type of performances, continual 20-point games? What kind of DJ Wilson are you going to get? That guy seems to be really hot or really cold. So Michigan could have that type of success where they carry it through, but we have seen it before with the UConn. Now, granted, the extra stuff with the plane and all those different things. Certainly, I don't necessarily know if they help the Wolverines just with all that like angst and things, but they have to put that behind them and they have to move forward from this point forward. So we've seen it before. I think that we can see it again, and I think that if you're looking at a team, if you're looking at your bracket right now, Michigan is a team that you probably would look at and say, hey, they could do something special.
So, Justin, you've said now that you've put together your Final Four, your bracket. Who are a couple teams that you have being bracket-busting dark horses?
Ooh, the dark horses. Well, I have Notre Dame coming out of the West to go to the Final Four. That's a team that will finish third in the best conference in the country. So looking at who they potentially have, I mean, I think their toughest game is going to be against West Virginia in the round of 32. If they get past that, I mean, the toughest team they're going to play is Gonzaga. And Gonzaga still has not been tested against a team like the rigors of the ACC. So I think Notre Dame can get at least to the Elite Eight against the Gonzaga team. They would only have to play potentially Florida State or Arizona from the bottom half of that bracket unless a team gets hot. So I see Notre Dame having a clear path to the Final Four in the West Division. So that's a 5 seed going all the way to the Final Four. I really, really do like Oregon as well. Baylor coming out of the East, the 3 seed in the East, they have proven all year long that they're a tough, athletic, big, long team, and they can beat some really good teams. So I look at a 3 seed out of the East potentially in the Baylor Bears. They would have to beat Duke to get there, but those are 2 on that side. And then the other side of the bracket, I really like Kansas or Iowa State, because I think that'll come down to like the rematch between those 2 teams to come out of the Midwest. And then I think North Carolina's got a lock on stuff. I don't think that you can put a team, maybe UCLA or Kentucky, but I really like North Carolina's chance to get to a Final Four.
Lonzo Ball's dad. Can we just talk about a guy who believes his own hype? Like, he said that he could take on Michael Jordan and beat Michael Jordan one-on-one. The guy averaged like 2 points in all of his like college career. Have you ever seen a guy talk this much trash out of nowhere for no good reason? And shouldn't he just shut up at this point?
Yeah, I think the key is, I mean, parents sometimes are the worst enemies of their kids in amateur athletics. Look across the board. I mean, even goes down to the little league level. If little Jimmy's dad is a pain in the rear, no one wants little Jimmy on the team, just because the coaches and the other teams and other parents don't want to have to deal with his dad or his mom or whoever it is. And in the Ball case, look, those kids are unbelievably talented. Let the kids be the stars. Get out of the way. It's one of those. It's the same thing that you see, on all levels. Just be happy for your kids, support them in any way, but don't make yourself a headline. And that's what he's doing right now. And I don't necessarily care too much about it, but look, his kids are going to make a lot of money. So.
Poor Lonzo Ball. All he wanted to do was go to college and be a pastry chef. Now he's got to go play in the NBA. That's some BS. Bro.
Yeah. Right. Oh, plumber.
Hey, you want to tell us about your Final Four? Who you got for your Final Four?
Final Four for me, I have Duke out of the East, North Carolina out of the West. I have Oregon out of the Midwest, and I have North Carolina out of the South. So that's a breakdown of a 2 seed, a 5 seed, a 3 seed, and a 1 seed. And in this year's tournament, I think that there really are about 6 or 7 teams that are maybe a half ahead above of everybody else, but this will be a crazy year. I really do think that this could be one of those years where the brackets are busted very early for a lot of different reasons, but I didn't want to put 2 seeds and 2 1 seeds and a 3 seed in the Final Four. I just don't think that that's going to be how it is this year. So I'm almost playing the numbers game more so as far as what seeds besides the 1 and the 2 seeds. I don't even have a 2 seed except for Duke in the Final Four. So I have a 3 and a 5 and a 1 and a 2. So I'm playing more of that type of number. Now, it turns out to be chalk. We've only seen it a handful of times where all the 4 1 seeds get there. I don't think Gonzaga will get there, so I wouldn't put Gonzaga in the Final Four. Villanova has a real good chance to repeat. It's so hard to do. So it's very hard for me to put them in over a Duke team that did very well all of a sudden. And, Kansas is just proven time and time again that Bill Self can't get it done in the tournament. I mean, look at the first round of the Big 12 tournament. They lost to a horrible TCU team. So for them, they have some tricks. And Michigan State or Miami could trip them up in the second round. I don't see it necessarily happening, but then they have a potential rematch with Iowa State or a Purdue team. If they get that far, they could get tripped up by Ethan Happ, or not Ethan Happ, the tall 7'4" guy and Biggie Swanigan and the hot shooting from Purdue. So I don't see Kansas getting to the Final Four, at least very easily. And then in the South, North Carolina won't be challenged till late. At least Elite 8. I don't see any of the teams in the top half of their bracket. I mean, they're going to beat Arkansas or Seton Hall. They'll beat Minnesota or Butler if those 2 teams even beat Middle Tennessee and Winthrop, because I have that as my 12-13 double upset going into the South. So North Carolina is the safest to the Elite 8 from the South Division as far as I'm concerned.
Do you remember a time where there was a NCAA bracket of 64 with this much parity where just kind of looking over it all, you could almost make a case for almost every team in this to sit there and cause some damage and to cause an upset. And, it's not as clear cut as, saying, hey, all the 1 seeds are going or all the 1s and 2 seeds have a great shot to sit there and win the entire thing. It's not as clear cut.
No, it's not. I do think that this is the part of the hype of the NCAA tournament, though, is the first weekend. I mean, you really have to pick your Cinderellas carefully, because I have found that in my bracket, if you want to win your bracket, it doesn't matter if you get 32 out of 32 right in the first round. What matters is you get 16 of 16 in the Sweet 16, and then from there on in. because it really doesn't matter if you miss the 12-5 upsets, because likely the 12 seed isn't going to make a big run. Yeah, they might get to a Sweet 16, but they're done there. Let's be real. Let's be frank. We're not seeing a whole lot of teams go deep to a Final Four. We haven't seen that in a very long time. But yeah, there's been a couple of years in the past 3 or 4 years that I've seen kind of a wide open field, and there was a couple of years ago where it looked like it was Kentucky versus the rest of the field. I know Vegas was taking bets 2 years ago that Kentucky would make the Final Four and then win a national championship, and it was kind of versus everybody else, and that ended up not happening. So there's a lot of openness, but that's what makes it so much fun. So when you're picking out your bracket, I mean, it's very important to try to identify the Sweet 16, Sweet 8 teams more so than it is to identify which 12-5 you get, because that won't kill you. What will kill you is if you look at going into next Thursday when we're looking at the Sweet 16, if you only had 10 of 16 and then you lose half of those, guess what? You're not doing too hot. So
Justin Rose, host of the Channel 7 Suburban Ford Sports Cave. You can watch it every Sunday, 11 a.m. Great show, great insight. Now, we're going to get you out of here on this. You've been the inspiration for us to earn credentials, to get out there around town, to cover some sporting events. Well, the network got lucky enough to cover the NCAA game, Michigan versus Oklahoma State in Indy. So I'm seeking your advice, a new reporter going out there to cover a game. What 1 or 2 tidbits would you give a young guy going out there to cover an NCAA tournament game?
First things first, get there early and kind of set up shop. You can watch all the other games that are going on. Now, Michigan plays at noon, so you'll be able to be there early because you'll be one of the first games played. I think actually are the first game played at the site. But you'll be able to be there and check out all of the action afterwards, especially after you get done with your post game. You'll probably get out during halftime of the next game, and then take advantage of the food. They do feed you twice a day there at the arena, so make sure you get your fill there. But then hit the nightlife. I mean, Indianapolis is a great town. It's not been for a sporting event. They really do a nice job. Everything's really close within walking distance of everything else. And you got to get the shrimp cocktail from St. Elmo's. I'm telling you, if you go to Indy and you don't go to St. Elmo's and at least get the shrimp cocktail, you don't have to eat a full meal there. It's pretty expensive. But a $20 shrimp cocktail there is so worth every penny. And hopefully you'll like spicy food, because that thing will clear your sinuses out in first bite. But it is delicious, and I would recommend that more so than anything.
Justin, thank you so much. We appreciate your work. Thank you for being a friend of the podcast. We look forward to future chats down the line. And always remember, don't bet against the Spartans, man.
Hey, in most years, I believe you. I just don't think that Michigan State has what it takes. And if Miles Bridges decides to be a ball hog and go for 30 points a game, maybe I'm taking a little bit of a different tune. I just don't think there's enough supplementary guys around him, and they have not shown it this season that consistently, I should say, that all 4 of the freshmen can be big-time playmakers in there. So I like their chances against Miami. They're another inexperienced young team that I think Michigan State could be a little bit more athletic with. But when you run into that Kansas Jayhawk buzzsaw and, Josh Jackson and all the other freshmen that they have and a couple of seniors that they have, I just don't see it this year. But then again, Tom Izzo has always said, you win me the first game, I'll win you the second. So we'll see if Izzo has a little bit of magic with this team. He's been saying he loves this team all year long, so who knows? But I don't know. I'm not taking them too far, and if they end up busting my bracket, it just makes a good local story.
Hey, and if sports reporting doesn't work out for you, you can always become our travel agent anyways.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. How well do you pay?
Well,
let's talk about the pay.
We can work that out.
Okay, all right, fine. I demand at least $150,000.
Have your agent contact us, and we'll get that all figured out for you.
All right, my man. Have fun in Indy. Go blue, go green, and go March Madness. Best time of the year.
That's right. Thanks, Justin. We appreciate it.
All right, see ya.
Take it easy, bud.
That was friend of the podcast, Justin Rose. Always great insight, real good dude, and like I said, inspiration for us to get out there and try some new things. And hey, we'll see what happens going out to Indy, taking the misses out there. We'll see what it's all about to cover the NCAA. Maybe get some shrimp cocktail per the recommendation of Justin Rose. Definitely give him a follow at JRoseWXYZ, friend of the podcast, and definitely a good dude. Stay with us, coming back. Adam and I both went to Monday Night Raw. I think we had the same opinion of it, but we want to review it, recap it, and end this podcast. You're listening to Doc and Jock on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Doc and Jock here for Fanatic U. If you're looking for some sweet sports swag and you love your Detroit teams, and I mean you really love your Detroit teams, you got to check out FanaticU.com. and get the coolest gear out there and rock your Red Wings shirt, rock your Lions shirt, rock your Piston apparel. Wear it till the wheels fall off. Michigan State, you know what? They got it too. Check out Fanatic U. They have 6 locations all over Metro Detroit. Check them out, fanaticu.com.
Yeah, we coming now. Come on. Yeah, that's right. We put it down. It's like a family in here, just a little disabled. Putting it down, we lay them out on the table. Yeah. Who's in the house? The brothers in the house. Gotta turn it on out, let you know what we about. Kinda like Cain and Abel, a bit unstable. Don't be breaking the brain, break the whole damn table.
Yes, sir. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for all the support. And thank you for finding this very fine podcast across the various platforms that anywhere you can find podcasts, you can find the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. So, cuz, I got a bone to pick with you because what have I been telling you day in, day out in terms of expectations? You hope that when you go to something that you have no expectations, have the event over-deliver. But when you have high expectations, like maybe The Undertaker will show up, like maybe a Finn Balor will show up, when you have those kind of expectations and then the company that you love, the company that you go to watch, teases you as well by playing The Undertaker dong and knowing that the camera crew, because I was sitting right by a camera, and right before HBK did come out, the camera crew went up there and stuck a camera on a mount, and we're like, uh-oh, something's going down. So I did get to see how they did position the camera when HBK did come out, but no Finn Balor, no Undertaker. Brock Lesnar did not fight. Goldberg wasn't there. It was a good Raw overall being there, being that we love wrestling, you and I. But for me, knowing that maybe wondering, is Finn Balor going to come out? Is The Undertaker going to come out at any point? Knowing that they didn't give you that big, huge pop. I mean, HBK was cool. But for me, you've seen him before. It was a nice surprise. But I just think for the last show at the Joe, just give the people what they want. Have The Undertaker stroll out there. You get the ovation. You have the roof really pop off the place. HBK was cool. I'm not going to lie. As a childhood dude, that when that music comes out. But it's not HBK. I mean, it's not the whole sparkly robe,
leather chaps.
No, it's the guy in the cowboy boots.
They're strutting and
it was a good segment, well written. It built up to the crescendo. But the guy that should have came out should have been Finn Balor, or the guy that should have came out when Roman Reigns called out The Undertaker could have been The Undertaker himself. But it was an okay show. I would rate it a C+.
That's better than me. I was giving it a C-, and that was me being nice because, look, WWE, if you're a wrestling fan, they put on some of the best product right now, so that's just me being liberal. I was really, when I sat there and I went home and I laid down at nighttime, and as you can tell, my voice is absolutely trashed days later from that show because I screamed my head off like a little girl. Brock Lesnar came out. I was cussing him up and down. I don't know.
Well, first and foremost,
we sat in a really good spot with all kinds of dudes who were super creative with all different chants and different things that we were all screaming. It was great. I went with my buddy Brian Crane and my buddy Jay Bard, and it was outstanding. They were great to go with. It was a lot of fun. We had a blast the entire day, and it was a good time. I thought the Raw itself, though, left a lot to be desired.
First and foremost, who's got the best gig in the entire world than Brock Lesnar? Dude just shows up to a town.
He doesn't even talk.
He doesn't even talk, but his music in and of itself is a thing to see. So they build it up. Hey, Brock Lesnar's going to be there. No problem. So he comes out there, stands there, jumps around. His entrance is great. I mean, the music is perfect. It sets the scene. He walks down to the ramp. But then the show is Paul Heyman. He comes out there, and he's a guy that is, what did we rail about last week? A guy like Paul Heyman doesn't need a script.
No.
You go out there, you let him flow, and the dude is just a performer, and he gets the point across, but it really didn't advance anything. He just basically restated what happened, hyped up Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar goes home, 10 minutes of work.
Yeah. Done.
10 minutes.
Taking a fat payday.
He's
about to be your next WWE Universal Galactic Superstar of the Universe title championship winner.
And the way his deal is structured is it counts as an appearance.
Yeah.
He's on a per appearance deal. Show up for 10 minutes and knock that off the list.
Raking in the cash or what?
And then, if they use him too much, he gets to negotiate and say, hey, per appearance, I get so much money because he is a draw. People will want to see him, but at least have him say something. At least have him come out and destroy something or do something different, not just stand there and hop around. But it was okay, I guess, for that opening segment.
Overall, just the entire night in a nutshell, right? I thought it left more to be desired than what we got. Again, I wanted to see.
What would you
I wanted to see Finn Balor, Undertaker. I wanted to see one of those guys. I got none of those. Right? Seth Rollins coming out at the end, that was good. But I wanted to see more. I didn't get more. I got less.
But don't you think the ending, though, could have made up for it? The ending was supreme.
No, because if you look at the way the matches all ended, they were all either contested or DQ finishes. I don't need to see that. Give me an actual finish.
1, 2, 3.
Right. No legit finishes, which pissed me off. Again, watching it live, this is something we discussed beforehand. Watching it live, it is a made-for-television product. So it's a little bit disjointed when you're watching it in the arena. It's a little bit different. But that sometimes sucks the energy out of the arena because there's so much going on for what's going to happen next on TV that you're just like left there. You're like, all right, well, what are we waiting for? It's just a lot of downtime sometimes.
And to provide context, so when Kevin Owens comes out, he walks down to the ramp, and as Andrea and I are looking, they're like, they're still getting the cruiserweight ring set up. Mm-hmm. So Kevin Owens is walking really slow, and they don't show it on TV. Right. So Kevin Owens is walking to the ring. They're still getting the mat ready, taking the tape off of the ring because they during the cruiserweights they make the ropes purple.
Right.
So he's walking to the ring. All of a sudden they go to commercial. So Kevin Owens now walks around, and that kills the momentum. And then what WWE does for the fans in the arena is they start putting videos, hype videos, replays of the last week's Raw, hype videos for WrestleMania, different promos for the network, stuff like that. So it does pass the time so you don't get bored. But if you're sitting there watching, Kevin Owens just kind of strolling around. Then he gets in the ring, and then his music starts playing again. So it's kind of disjointed. It kind of feels like a movie set where they're going and chopping it up into pieces.
Right.
So it makes it, and you're confused as to like what's live on TV, what's not. But the segments, I felt similar to you in that the matches weren't that great. But seeing Austin Aries perform was interesting. Seeing Chris Jericho, I felt like that match was hurried and could have been done a lot better. It was a match that you could have hyped up, put it last. Why do you put it right there in the first hour and, have it end quick? Everybody wanted to really see Jericho. He was the star of the night. People wanted to see him. You could have had a highlight reel if you didn't want to have Chris Jericho. And then you think that the staples of Raw weren't there. You have the New Day backstage. You don't have the New Day come out at the final, Joe. That should be a staple. That should be the first thing written. New Day come out, do something, say something. They don't have to have a match, but you have to have them come out, not to sit in the back and have a backstage stupid interview segment that really was pointless. You could have cut out Big Show and Titus Young. You could have put that in the jobber matches from 7:30 to 8. That should never make a Monday Night Raw, but you have to fill space. So I would have wrote it differently in terms of the matches and maybe some more things, maybe specific to the Joe. Heck, you could have had Vince McMahon come out there and do a speech, something different. That would have got a pop. But the way they built up to Roman Reigns confronting and having a chat with HBK was really cool because we all had a feeling something was coming. And I texted you like, okay, something's going down because I saw the camera crew. People were hyping it up. And then when Roman Reigns is in the ring, they went to commercial. So it really heightened the suspense. So when you come back, HBK's music comes on, and it was cool to see a WWE Hall of Famer. But you just needed one more item to make it, a special event for the Joe. You need a staple, and I don't think the staple is going to be HBK coming back or Seth Rollins returning and fighting Triple H. But for us, because you know why? For us is we're guys that we watch wrestling every week. So we see Triple H, we've seen his entrance, we've seen Seth Rollins. What you don't get to see too often nowadays is The Undertaker. How many times would you say the fans of Detroit have seen a Finn Balor entrance? Once, if that, and none at all. So I think that would have been special to have him come back. But if you look at it logistically, it would have been hard to write him in. I mean, where do you put him in? What do you have him do? You could have had him come out and maybe work with Mick Foley or something at the end.
Exactly.
But how do you have?
That's where you would have had him come in at. Because if Seth can't go, and it looks like Seth will be able to go because Hunter,
he's moving around.
Hunter worked over the knee pretty severe on Monday Night Raw. So it looks like Seth will be ready to go for Mania, but that's where you would have put Finn in. Or
if you wanted to swerve, you could say we're going to bring back a great superstar, and then everybody's wondering, is it Undertaker or Finn Balor? You could then heighten the suspense throughout the whole show.
You could have done something. Basically, what we got out of this was you got Shawn, you got Sacco, and then you got Seth, right?
And Triple H too. See, Triple H is pretty cool.
Whatever. I'm over it, right? I'm serious. I don't need to see the McMahons ever. I don't. And that includes Triple H. He's a McMahon, right? He basically took Stephanie's last name. That's what he is. All right. It's Hunter Hearst McMahon. That's what we got, right? HHM. But I just don't need to see them. I don't. Like, I'm over it. Like, let's let other people sit there and do things. Do you realize this is the biggest complaint I have about WWE? And I feel like this has become our WWE bitch session every single week, and it sucks. And I hate the fact that we come on here and we bitch about it, right? Because we watch this. Like, do you realize coming into our show today, we've invested at least 5 hours of our lives watching wrestling? That's a lot of time, man. I could be doing other things. I could be writing a book. I could be looking for a better job. I could be doing any other thing in the world, right? I could be sitting there doing more research for our show. Instead, I spend 5 hours watching wrestling. It's not good. It's bad time management. Anyways, I come on here and I complain. Do you realize right now we've got one of the deepest rosters for wrestling? One of the deepest, right? And you're probably sitting there like, no, we don't. It's nowhere as near as good as it was in the Attitude Era. There are guys on this roster up and down it that are being misutilized, miscast. And do you realize why? Because you've got part-timers like Triple H. John Cena's becoming a part-timer. You've got The Rock. You've got all these guys who have to come in and they have to technically steal the show at WrestleMania or at a pay-per-view. There's no reason that we need to see AJ Styles versus Shane McMahon. There's no reason Shane McMahon needs to wrestle. He's not necessarily a part-timer because he's part of the SmackDown brand. He's part of the show. He is the, the chairman or whatever. I don't know exactly how they title his position. He's not the general manager, but he's part of that show. I get it. I don't need to see you wrestle. I don't need you on screen. I do love Shane O'Mac. I love when Shane O'Mac comes out and he dances. That's all I need him for. Just dance for me, puppet. I don't need you to do anything else. I don't. I can't stand seeing Stephanie. That's part of the reason why my voice is gone. She was out there sucking up 25 minutes of airtime. And the whole time I sat there and screamed. And I screamed foul obscenities at her because I can't stand her. Then Triple H came out and he was sucking up just as much time. And I screamed more foul obscenities at him because I don't need to see you. I've seen you. You were part of my childhood. Go back to my childhood and die. That's where you need to stay. I don't need to see this stuff. I don't, especially in a live event. And this is what I'm going to say about the live events, right? I enjoy it. I've been to a TNA event when TNA used to travel around and do shows, right? And I went to one of the pay-per-views. It was really good. It was interesting. I really liked it. I thought it was well produced, well done. It didn't feel choppy, didn't feel disjointed. I've been to a Monday Night Raw before this one, right? It was good. It didn't feel as disjointed as this one. They always feel a little bit disjointed, but not as bad as this one. This one was really disjointed for me. Looking back on it, I'm a little upset at how much money I spent for that evening because honestly, I think it's much better to watch this product at home on TV. Sitting on my couch, getting to go pee in my bathroom, not in a trough at the Joe, getting up and grabbing a snack from my kitchen, not having to pay $10 for whatever. You know, I mean, the one thing that I don't do at home that I did that night was I drink a lot. I drink a lot of beers. And if you go back, and I pulled most of those tweets down because they were just misspelled and it was the wrong punctuation and wrong grammar for a lot of them because I was in the zone. I was Bobby Hurley and I was ITZing. I thought I was part of that Duke basketball team. That's how bad I was balling out that night, right? So that is the one difference. I don't drink when I watch at home because then you're an alcoholic. But I do drink when I go to the Joe. And that was the one difference. I would much rather watch this. This is my preference. I'd much rather watch a WWE product on my couch than in the arena.
See, I would disagree with that in that, you know what? There is no replicating being around all the other fans screaming that one pop. You just want more of it. That's the problem. You know what it is?
You realize when Jericho came out last week, I got chills. I was sitting on my floor and I got chills. That's outstanding, right? So I'm sure in the arena, it was probably 10 times better. Sitting in the arena this time, no chills, no nothing. I popped when Shawn Michaels came out because I love Shawn Michaels and I sang his song, I'm a sexy boy. That's right. I'm not your boy toy. It's just a sexy boy. Yes, I love Shawn Michaels. Whatever, okay? Seth Rollins came out. I was like, all right, yeah, cool. I was really hoping for Finn. And I feel bad for Seth because I like Seth. Yeah. But I was really hoping for Finn. And then I got into arguments with everybody about Roman Reigns because everybody hates Roman Reigns. It's not Roman Reigns' fault that he's booked like crap. Oh. It's not Roman Reigns' fault that he's got to go beat The Undertaker. No, it's not Roman Reigns' fault that he sat there and destroyed an outstanding wrestler or a guy who looks really credible as a monster in Braun Strowman. No, it's not Roman Reigns' fault. You know whose fault it is? It's Vince. Do you know why? Because Vince loves John Cena. And you know what he sees Roman Reigns as? His carbon copy. That's why. Okay. I hate it.
Yeah, let's wrap it up with that and just say, listen, right now in terms of wrestling, they could do more. You can't have AJ Styles fight Shane McMahon. It's a terrible feud. It's
awful.
It's a horrible feud. You got to end it with that.
You took this guy's WrestleMania moment away so he can go sit there and wrestle Shane O'Mac.
You got to wait another year for him. They'll give him his moment.
The dude's going to jump off a Titantron and kill himself. Somebody hold Shane O'Mac from Shane O'Mac because he's going to hurt himself. We don't need to see that. Just come out and dance with your new nice sneaks on and always zoom in on his Jordans or whatever he's wearing. They always look crispy and clean. And just don't let the dude kill himself. The guy's going to moonsault off of something and end up through 4 tables, a guardrail, a 5-year-old child sitting in the front row, and maybe he might just blow out his spleen through his behind. I don't need to see these things.
Yeah, so great podcast. We just wanted more from Monday Night Raw. But hey, But hey, you going to the house show? I thought it was the last event.
Yeah. They totally rooked us on that, didn't they?
Yeah, they're like, it's the last event at the Joe. Oh, by the way, we're doing a house show on the 20th, and here's a presale. Go out there and get some tickets right now.
By the way, was it July 29th?
Oh,
We have a house show.
Come on.
It's like a Saturday. Thanks.
Thanks,
WWE, for totally boning us. Oh, yeah. I went back and I actually, looking back on it, for this week's podcast, I spent 5 hours of wrestling plus 3 again, because I watched all of Monday Night Raw over again to see what the difference was, see what I like, see if I missed anything. And you do miss quite a bit.
You do miss the commentary, the context.
Yes, you miss quite a bit of
why this stuff is happening.
Yes, just the background stories, because it's so loud in the arena, you can't sometimes hear. So there's a ton of stuff that you end up missing, and I end up spending 8 hours watching wrestling this week. I still got to get through TNA, which is a 2-hour event, and I still got ROH to watch. I still have 3 more hours this week of wrestling to watch. That's a lot of wrestling. At some point, I got to fit NXT in there. If I do, I don't know. My wife's going to hate me. She's going to divorce me.
Episode 188 coming to a close, inching ever so closer to that magical number 200. Great podcast. We'll see what happens during this great weekend of March Madness. We'll see what happens going down to Indy. So it's a good time. I hope everybody survived the windstorm and whatever nightmare that produced. Hope everybody's doing okay. Thank you for tuning in. Adam and I love talking sports. We love being able to come in here and talk about whatever the hell we want on our own terms because of your support. Thank you. Follow us on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. You can follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. And definitely check out our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. More mock drafts, more content, great interviews. All the great guests stop here first, and we greatly appreciate it. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Thank you to Justin Rose. See everybody next time.
Go blue, go green.
Better fix that voice by next week, or you're gone.
I'm working on it.
This was locker room talk.
Second dick.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I have voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me.